بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب زدني علما رب زدني علما رب زدني علما.
Coming back to the negative attributes and to the oneness of God, which is the last and many would say the greatest of the negative attributes. We spoke yesterday about cause and effect, and this comes generally under the oneness of God's act. So ta'thir, which is actual causation, making things happen. This for us is the prerogative of God and God alone. There is no ta'thir in the creation, no real causation that pertains to anything but God. And as we said yesterday, our language, when we speak about that, is very accurate language because it is very descriptive. And so we have the sabab. The sabab we could call the cause, but the word actually means link. And then we have the musabbab, which is the effect that is linked to it. And then we have the musabbib, which is God who makes the link happen. Now, in this, as we said yesterday, when we look in the world around us and we see all sorts of causes and effects, fire burns dry things, rain causes floods, the water that we drink quenches our thirst, the food that we eat, if it's good and wholesome, nourishes us, the medicine we take, if it's good medicine, it gives us remedies and cures us. You want to learn, you study, right? So the study is a sabab, and the musabbab linked to it is to learn. Okay, our life is full of that. But all that we see empirically, all that we hear, all that we perceive with the senses is nothing but the link. That you see the fire, and you see the fire closely associated with the wood, and the wood burns. And you do not see causation, because causation is a metaphysical property. And in order to say how that causation occurs, you've got to go beyond the five senses. And we do that. We go to revelation, and we go to pure reason, the structure of reality. The realm of possible being is the realm of infinite possibilities, and cause and effect in that realm must be in the domain of necessary being. That's pure reason. Okay, and then we have experience too, which is the experience of exceptions to this, like the miracles of the prophets and like the karamat of the awliya. And actually many people, maybe many of you, things happen in your lives that are very strange, very rare. I know my wife is a very reasonable woman, very wise woman, and I've never known her to lie. And she is very grounded. And when she was a little girl, about 8 years old, she actually saw a mouse talking to another mouse. And she said she saw it right there in front of her. And then they said, "Let's go," and they ran away. And she said, "Wallahi, I saw that." And that's not customary experience. But she said, "Wallahi, I saw that." So, sometimes things happen like that. That's why when we talk about experience, we talk about customary experience. And again, when we talk about science, and we are scientists, and inshallah we are the great scientists, and we have in this room people that I hope will be great scientists, like this man and that man and others. But one of the things that we must do is hold science to the rules. And that is that empirical science must describe, because that's all it can do. it can measure, it can weigh, it can run experiments, but it can only describe. And again, when we talked about the expansion theory of the universe, based on the Doppler effect and Hubble's law, that brings you to creation from nothing. Creatio ex nihilo. Nihilo. And some scientists like Hoyle, when he was faced by that, he said there will be no metaphysical intrusions in physics. We're going to explain this only by physical means, and that is tyranny and that is ignorance. There must be metaphysical intrusion. This is the right of pure reason. When we study reality, we have to describe it very carefully. And we have to make sure that we never go beyond the description. And if we do, that we know why and how we are doing that. And we have every right, and in fact, we have every need and necessity in the study of science to bring in revelation and to bring in pure reason, to make sense of it. That's the way our science works, and that creates real science. And many of the great mistakes in science are because of the fact that scientists intrude into metaphysics, and that they cannot do. Evolutionary theory is filled with that. It has very little scientific value. The description of the biological world and the genetic world is very important. We have to be involved in that, as our brother Muhammad Ghailan is. May Allah bless him and protect him. And again, we have to discuss this at a really high level, as he is very capable of doing, and as he does. But, science has no right to get into metaphysics. It can't do that. It doesn't have wings to fly. But pure reason has every right and necessity to get into science. And then to come up with theories and propositions that can make it expand and that are tested out and verified and so forth. This is very important. And when we talk about laws in science, and these kind of things are discussed thoroughly by philosophers of science in the West. They're very honest about these things. But many people today who study science, they don't study the philosophy of science. They don't study philosophy. They don't study metaphysics. They don't study the history of science. But laws in science are not laws by necessity. Nature doesn't impose laws. Nature doesn't have laws. All the laws of science are psychological generalizations about what we see. They are presumptions. They are provisional. We make laws. And in fact, the word law is not a very polite word. Maybe we can use another word. Maybe we can find a better word. But natural laws are provisional. And they are not deductive. They are not deductively valid because they are never derived from first principles. They are simply generalizations about experience. So these are really important things. They're methodological points. And we believe that cause and effect is totally in the hands of God. And therefore, when we are faced with the miracles of the prophets and the messengers in history, and when we see our history filled with the karamat of the awliya that are undeniable and that you have to believe in, and you see in your own life, I've seen it in my life many times, and we see also often strange things that happen in life, like my wife hearing the mice speak, and she will swear to that till the day that she dies. That these are exceptions to customary experience, and they tell us the nature of customary experience. So when things happen regularly, like fire burns, this is the sunnah of Allah. This is a valid description of it. And God can suspend that or abrogate that as he pleases. Another assumption of modern science, which Hume was very clear about also, is that modern science assumes the uniformity of nature. And do you assume that? There's no basis for that. There's no base. And that also means that when you see evidence like the Doppler effect, for example, and the expansion of the universe, it may not be that way. Because that's all assuming the uniformity of nature. But reality is very complex. This is the point. We talk about necessary existence, which inshallah, you have the ability to take into your heart and to understand and to contemplate. And it is profound and possible existence, which is also wondrous, infinite possibilities. Possible existence is the domain of infinite multiplicity. Necessary being is the domain of absolute unicity and not numerical series. It's not numbers, it's not enumerated. God is not one in a numerical series of 1, 2, 3, 4. God is one in that he is utterly without multiplicity, utterly without parts, utterly without elements, utterly real. And everything else is almost like an illusion. Okay? So understanding the nature of possible being, this is one of the first paradigms, one of the first cognitive frames. But in reality, existence is the secret of secrets. You will never know the secret of existence in this world or the next world, not even your own existence. And existence has many different levels. And we don't talk about that in creed, because in creed we could just suffice with necessary being and possible being and impossible. But the reality is, you have, like Shaykh Hamza said, Jabarut, the realm of lights, and you have Malakut, the realm of the angels and of the archetypes and of spiritual realities. And you have the lowest level of reality, which is mulk. Okay, and these are incredible, and there's more than that. And I think this is also very important when we come to things like human action, which we want to talk about now, because as our theologians have said, the human action lahu jihatun kathira. It has many dimensions. It is extremely complex. It is very nuanced. And it is the secret of the secret. It's the ostrich egg, which is buried in the desert. Al-Baydul Maknoon. Al-Baydul Maknoon. Ostrich eggs are beautiful. You've seen them, haven't you? They're big and they're beautiful. And for the pre-Islamic Arabs and for many people, ostrich eggs were very valuable. And one of these Indian mosques that are on the coast of Kerala, which are really among the most beautiful mosques I've ever seen, incredible mosques. The mihrabs there have ostrich eggs, which and the what do we call it? Where the imam gives his khutbah. What do we call that? The steps that go up. The mimbar. Yeah, mimbar. What did I say? I say mihrab. The mimbar, it has ostrich eggs, which shows you what? That these are sea traders. They're coming to India from Arabia, and they're coming to Arabia from East Africa. And they're bringing ostrich eggs. But the ostrich egg is buried away in the desert, so the ostrich knows where it is, and you don't know, because it's very valuable. But the human act is like that. It is precious. It is really precious. So when it comes to human action, we believe that human beings are free. And we believe that God knows everything. And that God knows exactly who you are. What is your identity? Everything you will do, every thought you will think, every garment you will wear. every pair of shoes that you'll choose to wear, every book that you will open to read, all of this is known. And all of this is willed. And all of this is created by divine power. And yet, you are free. And we call that the doctrine of acquisition. The doctrine of acquisition, which is really important in our theology. It's one of the most important things. And is the doctrine of kasb and iktisab, using the Quranic terms of kasb and iktisab, acquisition. So you are an actor, you are a fa'il, and you are a real actor, not a metaphorical actor. But God is the fa'al. He is the perfect actor, the pure actor from infinity. And these two actions come together in every acquired act. As for things that are not acquired, like the beating of your heart, the blink of your eyes, the working of the cells of your body, that's just Allah. That's the fi'l of Allah. Idtirari. He keeps your heart beating. He keeps your cells working. He keeps the fluids of your body flowing. Okay, but your decision to sit there or to sit here, to come here, to put on what you put on, to fast today or not to fast, that's your decision. And you acquired it, and God created it. And God put it there before you. And He knew before the creation of the heavens and the earth that you would be sitting there, you would be sitting here, you would be sitting here. And He knew that you would be wearing that. And He knew that, that the clothes that you wear would be made by such and such a designer or such and such a company. All of that totally known to God. And He willed it to be. And He created it there before you, and you pick the fruit, and you take it, and you eat it. You acquired it. He creates at the instance of your will. Inda iradatik. He creates at the instance of your will, but not by your will. He doesn't create bi iradatik. He creates at the instance of your will. And you have this perfect synergy between you and your Lord, which is not always perfect, but it usually is. I want to raise my hand, there I did it. What an amazing thing. You want to stand on your tiptoes? That's a miracle of the nervous system. You should do that. Stand on your tiptoes and then tell your body, this is miraculous, because it is. You need to listen to your nervous system. Your nervous system will talk to you. It'll tell you, don't eat the sugar, it hurts me. But then if you don't listen, you abuse your body. When we overeat, we are abusing our bodies. Usually because we're not happy with ourselves. We have to listen to our bodies. When we listen to our bodies, then we listen to our brothers. We listen to our sisters. If you feel pain, you can feel joy. If you don't feel pain, you can't feel joy either. Okay? But the human action is a miracle. It is a miracle. And this is why you have the amana. You have the trust. You are the son or the daughter of the caliphate, of the khilafah, of the khalifa of Adam alayhi salam. So action is a big thing, a big thing. All Muslim theologians insist that you are a real actor. And that you are responsible for what you do, and that you acquired it, and that God created it, and God willed it to be, and that there is no contradiction here. Although this is a secret, we don't call it a mystery, we call it a secret. It is sirrul qadr. It is the secret of destiny. It is the secret of the heavens and the earth. It is the secret of Adam. And it's a powerful, it's like the ostrich egg. Al-baydul maknoon. Very, very valuable, very precious. Those in Islam who held that human beings created their actions They were called the Qadariyah. The Qadariyah, which we can write in English as Q-A-D-A-R-I-Y-Y-A. Qadariyah, from Qadar. And they were called that because they talked a lot about Qadar. They talked a lot about destiny, and they essentially rejected it. And they held in the early period that we create our actions. And that was the term they used. And they were regarded to be disbelievers because of that. Because you don't create your action, God creates your action. And the Qadariyah also had a political stance. So they tended to be people who were very opposed to the political oppression and social injustice of certain rulers in their mind. In some cases it was real, in some cases it wasn't real. But they wanted to hold those people absolutely responsible. And therefore the Qadariyah, in their definition of Iman, they said that Iman is to do what is obligatory and to not do what is prohibited. If you don't do what's obligatory, and you do what's prohibited, you're not a mu'min, you're not a believer, you go to hell. That's a really rigid takfir. And they were people who made war against many Muslims, and they felt themselves to be righteous. We are the best. And then they took this position also. And then as history goes by, another group of Qadaris comes about who tone down the doctrine. And they still want to say the same things. And they still have the same definition of Iman. But they're called the Mu'tazilis. The Mu'tazilis. They're an offspring of the Qadaris. But they won't say that you create your act. They don't at least usually say that. But nevertheless, they say other things. And the Sunnis regard the Mu'tazilis to be innovators. And they may not regard them to be disbelievers, but they regard them to be fasiq, have deviated, to be corrupt in their belief. The other position, the other extreme, is the extreme of complete determinism, meaning that I don't act. It looks that way, but I am like a leaf in the wind. Wherever the wind goes, I blow. I'm blown. Okay? And if I drink wine, God made me do it. And if I pray, God made me do it. And all my acts are just metaphorical. We say I act, it looks that way, but it's not true. And this also had a political background. Imam al-Maturidi talks about that. And its political background was to justify the oppression of the oppressors. Say that, well, they couldn't help it. This was decreed. And that position was regarded to be kufr also. Especially because it denies the Sharia. The Sharia is real. And the Sharia says you're responsible. It says you're guilty if you're guilty. And God pardons. And our position is the position in the middle. Imam Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, Al-amru bayn al-bayn, la jabra wa la tafweed, wa la ikraha wa la tasleet. These are the words of the Salaf. Beautiful words. Imam Abu Hanifa is like that too. When he speaks in al-fiqh al-akbar, subhanallah, you couldn't say it better. But he said, Al-amru, speaking about free will, bayn al-bayn. It's between the two extremes. La jabra wa la tafweed. There is no compulsion. There is no, let's use another word, coercion. Or there is no absolute determinism. Jabr. No jabr. God didn't make me do it. I did it. I acquired the act. It's my act. Not metaphorically, it's really my act. I chose to pick up the water and I chose not to drink it because I'm fasting. So I put it back down. I did that, right? And he can choose to drink it because he's, mashallah, he's not fasting. Alhamdulillah. And he will make that choice. Okay? So he said, La jabra wa la tafweed. And there is no consignment. In other words, Allah didn't consign actions to us. Like you do whatever you want. It's almost like creating your act. Wala ikraha. And there is no compulsion. In other words, I didn't want to drink the wine, but I had to drink it. You know? No, it's not like that. You chose to do that. There's no compulsion. You're guilty. You should be whipped. Okay? Wala tasleet, and there is no overlordship, or there's no empowerment. God doesn't make you a lord. He doesn't give you sultan so that you can create whatever you want. This is a beautiful statement. And then Imam al-Hasan, our Imam, all the Imams of Ahlul Bayt are our Imams, our flesh and blood. The line of al-Hasan, the lines of al-Hussein, all of them. But Imam al-Hasan, he said, وَالْبَوْنَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ الْبَيْنَيْنِ كَمِثْلِ مَا بَيْنَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. He said the distance, the gap that is between the two extremes is like the distance between heavens and earth. Heavens and earth. In other words, it's a huge difference. You know, it's not like we were almost Qadris or almost Jabris. No, they're at two extremes and we are in the center. So this is really important. We acquire our actions and we have the power to do that. You have the unique attributes that no one in creation shares absolutely with you. All the names of God are manifest in you. You know, the plant, the trees, the wheat, the grass, the cherry tree, all the plants, the name that is manifest in them is Ar-Razzaq, giver of provision. And there's also Al-Mateen, Al-Hakim, so many other names. But this tree gives you wood. This tree gives you shelter. This tree breaks the wind. This tree gives us cherries. This tree gives us apples. This wheat gives us grain. You know, and everything in these plants is a type of nourishment. And their leaves fall to the ground and they nourish the soil. Trees are amazing. وَالشَّجَرُ وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ. And the najm is the plant that grows on the surface of the ground, like grass, that doesn't have a stalk. And it usually dies and it appears in the spring or after rain. So it's called najm, because the najm is what appears after not being there. The star is also called a najm because you don't see it now, but at night you'll see it. The najm is like the grass, you know, the meadow, the field. And the shajar is any plant that has a stalk in Arabic. So wheat is a tree. Oats are trees. Every plant in Arabic that has a stalk is a tree, not just the stalk, the trunk of a cherry tree or an oak tree. وَالنَّجْمُ وَالشَّجَرُ يَسْجُدَانِ. And the herbs, the grasses, and the trees, they all prostrate themselves to their Lord. They are great worshipers in constant prostration. So, you though, you know, soil, dirt, you know, the name that stands out is Mumit, giver of death. You know, how much soil do you see in the Sahara Desert? How much soil do you see in the desert? But without water, it's like a sign of death. And water carries on it the stamp of Al-Muhyi, the giver of life. And you carry on you the stamp of Al-Jami', God who joins all the names together. That's you, the son or the daughter of Adam. You know, you're amazing. And you have the power to act because of the names. This is the secret that is in you. And the closer that you get to your Lord, the more amazing you act. You know, God sets us free when we become His slaves. You become Atiqur Rahman, right? He sets you free because, like, I belong to you. I give myself to you. Do with me whatever you want. Ask of me whatever you want. I will give it, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. I love you and no one else. I am for you and no one else. And then He loves you. I become the eye with which He sees, the ear with which He hears, the foot with which He walks, the hand with which He grasps, the heart with which He thinks, the tongue with which He speaks. This is all about the synergy of actions. And now he or she acts perfectly and freedom. This is an incredible thing. And if he asks me, I will give him. You know, this is a credible thing. So this is why it's important to keep the balance and to understand that there is no contradiction here. But we're talking about very complex aspects of reality that dovetail together in ways that are precious and that you can understand, but you've got to follow the map. And the map is the creed. You must believe that God has decreed in qada all that will be, and He has destined with qadar everything that exists. And yet you are free. And He made some white and He made some black. Okay, as we said before, the Prophet said that. I didn't say it. The Prophet has to say that, and there's no injustice there. This is identity. And the nature of those identities that God knows relates to the other world and to this world. We have to accept that. That's also sirrul qadr. And it's not something that can be explained, but it's a big truth. No injustice, wallahi, no injustice there. Even though that's not easy to compute. But this is the nature of action, and this is also great wisdom for many reasons. One reason is because how many pharaohs are there in history? How many? But like if we take humanity, how many pharaohs are there among the people out there? Many. But Pharaoh is the only one who is given the circumstances that he can do the things that he does. How many Nimrods are there? You know, how many Abu Jahals are there? You know, how many Samiris are there? Samiri, as you know, is the opponent of Moses. What was his name? Samiri. What was his name? Moses. His name was Musa. He's the one that screamed out to Moses, you know, I'm being attacked, help me. And Musa came to help him, and when he hit the man, Musa, all prophets are extremely powerful. He killed him. He didn't mean to do that. But, you know, one punch from a prophet and you're out, right? And, you know, so the man died. And then the next day, the man is fighting again in the streets. And then Moses sees him, and then he begins to tell him, what kind of a person are you? He's a fittan. He's always creating fitna, you know. And then he said, oh, so you want to now kill me as you did to the man yesterday? This is the Samiri. How many Samiris are there in history? The Samiri was also illegitimate. He wasn't really, he has the name Musa, but he's actually an illegitimate child. And we have to be really careful when we talk about things like that, because we live in an age where sexuality has become just a nightmare, right? People do whatever they want to do, however they want to do it, with whomever they want to do it. There is abuse upon abuse upon abuse, and marriages don't work anymore. No one knows how to be married. No one knows how to relate to the opposite sex. Many people don't. Some do. You know, many people don't. It's horrible. And children are abused. And children are abused often in their own families. Things that really were unthinkable. And that happens. And this affects us in every way. It affects us, and it makes it very difficult for us to understand the prophetic model, by the way. This is the age that we live in. This is the age that we live in. It's a nightmare. Okay, but in any case, when God creates the actions, it means also that evil that is there. But as I was saying, we have to be careful when we talk about illegitimacy, because we have many illegitimate people now. And that's not their sin, it's not their fault. Al-Islamu yajubbu ma qablahu. Islam erases everything after it. Like in the United States and Great Britain, cities like Detroit, what is the rate of illegitimate children? And especially children that just have a mother, they don't even know who their father is. It's a huge percentage. What will be the effect of that? In order for you to be a good human being, usually, the best thing in your life is your mother and father love each other. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and you can compensate for that, but the ideal situation is the mother and father love each other. And there's nothing on the face of the earth more precious than that. My mother and father are two streams that come together in the river of my heart. My father loved my mother loved my father. And that made me who I am. I had a best friend who had no mother and father. They were alcoholics, divorced. His grandmother made me, her name was Zina. Her name was Zina. She was a southern woman, Zina Glover. And she made me come to her house at least twice a week to be with her sons, because she felt this is a good friendship. But they had to struggle. And she tries to compensate in every way. Okay, but this is why in our married lives, you've got to know how to cultivate that love. And you've got to do that. And when you don't love your husband, or your husband doesn't love you, that abuses the child. And you can hide it, you can argue behind doors, but that is abuse to your children. Never forget that. You've got to keep this love going. And then we have the women of our families. I knew my great-grandmother, Maud Stevens, incredible woman. She lived to be over 102 years old. And she was like a mother to me. I knew my grandmothers. I knew my aunts. And they were all great women. My mother, our fathers, our grandfathers. This is what I had the honor to have, and many of you have that honor. This makes us really whole. Today, where do you find that? Where do you find that? So we have to put that back together. We have to create real families, okay? But in the creation of actions, because Allah creates the actions and human beings acquire them, you have many people that are extremely good. If they could create their actions, it would all be over. Everything would be good. Everything would be rosy. If every woman were like, if every woman that were like Rabia al-Adawiyya could do everything she wanted to do, all of our problems would be solved. But we are here to be tested. So this is why also we are allowed to acquire actions. And God creates at the instance of our will, but not always. And again, this is often to show you, just like Imam al-Ghazali. Imam al-Ghazali is one of the greatest scholars that ever lived. He's certainly one of the greatest scholars of Islam. He was a beautiful man. He was a great man. He had a brother named Ahmad who was a complete Sufi, a Shaykh. Imam al-Ghazali can speak, he can debate, he is humorous. He's got everything, and then all of a sudden he goes to his classes at the university, the Nizamiyya, and he can't talk. He can't even hardly say Basmala. Nothing comes out. No speech. No speech. What's wrong with me? This is Allah. You're not allowed to acquire. I didn't create this act for you. I took it away. And then his brother Ahmed tells him, you need to go away. You need to leave this job. You need to save your heart. And so he leaves his family in the best of conditions. They were wealthy people. His family's all taken care of. His brother is there. His extended family is there, and he goes off to Jerusalem, which was under the Crusaders. This is about 30 years before Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani will purify the place and liberate the place. Shaykh Imam al-Ghazali is just there with the Crusaders. And he goes to Mecca and Medina, he keeps the best company, and then Allah transforms him and makes him the jewel in the crown of Islamic scholarship. That's really important. So this is what we believe. This is our doctrine, and this is really important doctrine. And also for this reason, for you, one of the most important things is how do you acquire your act? That's what you've got to be about. You've got to acquire it with courtesy. You have to acquire it with thanksgiving. You have to acquire it, in the best possible way. Take it from your Lord. And again, Ya ayyuhal abdul da'if al-muthnib, I am weak. I am a servant of God, but I am weak and I am wrongful. And so therefore, everything you give me, Allah, it's from you. It's not from me. And if it's beautiful, I just thank you, because I don't have the power to do that. Not at all. If you want to erase it, it's gone. And I know that from experience. I know that, as many of you know that from experience as well. Have no power over anything. So he gives you that, and you look at the wonder of what he created in you. And you marvel at that, and you thank him, and you love him, and you turn to him. And the more perfectly you acquire your act, the more amazing it is. Because you have the attributes of lordship. We call them that. The attributes of lordship are the 7 attributes that we're going to study in a moment, bi'ithnillahi ta'ala. You have life, you have knowledge, you have will, you have power, you have hearing, you have seeing, you have speech. These are the attributes of lordship. In the case of God, these are necessary, uncreated, perfect attributes. In the case of you and me, they are created. They are temporal. They are rooted in non-existence. They are deficient. They're naqisa. But they are perfect asbab. They are perfect means or links, and they are perfect alat. They are perfect mechanisms to acquire action. In every action, the uncreated knowledge, uncreated will, uncreated power comes together in synergy with your created knowledge, your created will, your created power. And this is the human act. And it is a wondrous thing. And it is yours. And you will be rewarded for it, or punished, or forgiven. Okay, and this is the ostrich egg, al-baydul maknoon. This is the secret of the amana, of the trust of the heavens and the earth. And for this reason, the more perfectly that we acquire our acts as servants of God, may Allah make that possible. That I know I am weak. I know that I am incapable. I know that I am dhaleel. I am insignificant. I know this about myself. And I know that I'm jahul. I'm ignorant. How much I don't know. And so whatever Allah does for me and for you, mashallah, I can't believe it. You've done this. You've given me this gift. I don't deserve this gift. You guided me to Islam. You could have put me in the fire. I had a car accident when I was 15 years old, or 16. It was a horrible car accident right in front of my grandfather's house. About 30 feet from my grandfather. I was drunk. I was out with my friends. I don't even know if I was driving. We were on the interstate. My grandfather's house was back from the interstate. I had a trick that I would do with my car to go up and shoot over, go down the other ramp, but you have to be sober to do that. And I was racing up the ramp. And then all I remember is my lights go out in the darkness, in the middle of the night, and then they fall down in the grass, and boom! I was thrown 40 feet from the car through the window. And there were 3 of us. One was a shaitan, he was behind the whole thing. He wasn't even touched. And the other one was my good friend, he was almost killed. My grandfather, the shaitan went to the house, knocked on my grandfather's door. My grandfather came out, and he said, "This is Larry. This is him." And he said, he didn't know which one, because I looked like my friend. He thought I was dead. He just left me. And my friend, he worked on him, because he's still alive. And then we go to the hospital. He finds out that I'm not dead, and he got the wrong one. That hurt him a lot. And the surgeon comes out of the room, and my grandfather's there. He knows the surgeon, and he said, "That's my grandson. Go back in there." And he goes back in and works for another 2 hours. That's interesting, you know. And he works and works, and then, alhamdulillah, you know. But like, if I had died at that time, where would I be? I didn't believe in anything at that time, and I wasn't a good person at that time. And in fact, when I came to consciousness in the hospital, I was all filled with dope because I was hurting really bad, and I was covered with bandages, and all I saw was white. I said, "Am I in paradise?" I thought, really, is this the garden? Is this paradise? Because like, I feel really good, and all I see is white, you know. And you know, alhamdulillah, then Allah, you know, after that, He guided me. What if I had died then? You know, He saved me. He brought me back to life. You know, He let me come to this wonderful deen. You know, mashallah, tabarakallah. So when we acquire our acts properly, that I don't have anything to do with this act. I give it back to you, my Lord, with the right intention. Then the reality of the act kicks in. That this act that you do, whatever it is, this is from the infinite knowledge of God. This is from the perfect will of God, who chose it on the basis of wisdom between infinite other possibilities. And this is by the power of God and the wisdom of God. So now your act takes on a dimension which is almost divine, like the act of the saint. Whereas if I acquire my act from my will, my power, my knowledge, it's like I pollute it. It's not really worth very much. May Allah give us the power to act from the heart, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay, so now what we want to do is to begin the positive attributes. And he says here in verse 8, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, okay. He says, okay, وَقُدْرَةٌ إِرَادَةٌ ثُمَّ الْحَيَاةِ وَالْعِلْمُ وَالدَّلِيلُ خَلْقُ الْكَائِنَاتِ. He says 7, power, 8, will, furthermore 9, life, and 10, knowledge. Proof of these attributes is the creation of existent things. So here he will take the positive attributes, which we also call the substantives, the ma'ani. They're called the ma'ani because they posit substantive things about God, you know, that are not His essence, but are not different from His essence. They're not independent of His essence, but they are substantive attributes that God has. We call them ma'ani. And we call them sifatun wujudiyya. We call them also existential attributes. And we call them positive attributes. And they are attributes of jamal and of kamal. They are attributes of beauty and perfection, just as the negative attributes are attributes of majesty, jalal, pre-existence, everlastingness, dissimilarity. You know, worship your Lord as He deserves to be. Self-sufficiency, oneness, power. That's the negative attributes. And then you have the beautiful attributes of life, knowledge, will, power, hearing, seeing, and speech. And as we said before, but it's important to repeat, God has infinite attributes. But these are al-ummahat. These are foundational attributes that are essential for you to know in order to know your Lord. And He will teach you after that whatever He wills. He will give you after that whatever He wills. So the positive attributes are really important. And this first group of positive attributes, in the view of Al-Kattani, may Allah have mercy on him, and many of our scholars, especially Abu Hanifa, may Allah be pleased with him, are attributes that any human being should know on the basis of pure reason. That if you are sound, and most of us today are not sound, because the toolbox has been played with. You know, we have been given cognitive frames that do not compute. We don't know how to think about necessary existence or possible existence. You know, so we look, you know, I mean, I've been to these incredible places, like, you know, my sister Thamina took me to the Grand Canyon. I've been there many times before. Beautiful place. And just listen to what the tourists say. It's like, you don't see anything, do you? Like, miskeen, you're really, it's like, I mean, they don't know what to say. I've been to the Niagara Falls, which is one of the most incredible places in the world, especially if you saw it years ago, before they diverted a lot of the water. It used to be a huge fall, twice as big as it is now. And you see the tourists, they don't know, like, a lot of water, you know, a lot of water. It's like, you don't have anything more poetic than that. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of water out there. You know, it's like, these are signs of God. The Native Americans held these places to be virtually sacred space. And we don't know what to say, really. And we feel that. I felt that too. I was as blind as anybody. So we are often debilitated. That's why when we hear the position of Imam Abu Hanifa that human beings ought to be able to believe in God just by using their reason and fitrah, it's like, but who can do that today? And maybe Allah will excuse us. Maybe He will, because we live in a time when Satan has buttressed up everything and boarded the windows and locked the doors shut. We can't see anymore. We can't hear anymore. Okay, but these four attributes are believed to be manifest in creation, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear. And for most human beings, they are. Especially sound, natural human beings. The other three attributes, hearing, seeing, and speech, he will say, as you will see, that these are based on revelation. In other words, revelation is our key guide here. And some people say reason is also adequate, but many scholars say, no, here we will rely on revelation. So the 7 positive attributes come in 3 pairs. And they have one by itself. The one by itself is life. Life is, in a way, the most fundamental of all of the positive attributes. And God's life is necessary life. It's not spirit life. It's not organic life. He is not a spirit. He is not a nature. He is not a power. He is not an energy. And His life is totally necessary life. Not like anything you or I know. It's not the life of a breath or of a spirit or of a beating heart. It is perfect life, necessary, and it is pre-existent. And it is everlasting. And it is dissimilar, not like anything you know or I know. And it is self-sufficient, not derived from anything. He's not born, he did not give birth, and he was not given birth. Not derivative in any way. And it is one. What does that mean? I don't know. But it means tatawahad. It is utterly one. No parts, no elements, no body, no heart, no breath. Utterly one. That's what I believe. That's what you believe. That is our doctrine, and we hold to that. Okay? Then you have two pairs. And these two pairs are knowledge and speech. Knowledge and speech, because they relate to the same thing. And then we have will and power, because they relate to the same thing. And I'll explain that. And then we have hearing and seeing, because they relate to the same things. So we have three pairs, and we have one sole attribute by itself. And inshallah, this afternoon, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will begin to speak more about life, and perhaps then we can begin to speak about knowledge. And then we'll talk about will, and we'll talk about power in that order. That is a logical order. Just as in you have life, you have knowledge, you have will, and you have power. And they work almost in that order. With God, we can say that in a way that's very polite, but He's a necessary being, so it doesn't quite work like that. But for you, it does. You are alive, and you've got to be alive. And you're only alive to the extent that you believe, and your ruh, your spirit, is active in you, which it is, inshallah, in everyone in this room. And then you have knowledge, and you're getting knowledge. You're being given knowledge. Everyone here is giving knowledge, and we give knowledge to ourselves just by sitting with each other. You give me tabassur. You give me insight into myself just because of who you are. You have a gift too. It's not a one-way road. And then you have will, and you have power. And when you get these right, you will be powerful. Nufudh al-azma, executing the determination, power. You are alive, you have knowledge, you know this is the truth, you have will, and you have will power. You do it. This is the believer. We can really act. We can really do things, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We ask Allah to give us success in that. Let's look at some questions. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Could you repeat the quote by Imam al-Hasan about the extremes about human action? So let's do that. We'll take Imam Ali. The question of free will comes up in the days of Imam Ali. And Imam Ali, Asadul Ghalib, Imam al-Mashariqi wal-Magharib. He is the lion who overpowers, the Imam of the East and the West. In his days, he had the greatest test. And he was the one worthy of that test. But free will is a test for Imam Ali. So he says, they ask him about it. He tells them, be quiet. They ask and ask because it's a political issue. Al-amru bayn al-bayn. And this is another thing to remember too. All of the differences between the Sahaba are by the will of God and the wisdom of God. Don't ever say a word against them. You will be destroyed. They are the awliya of Allah. Don't ever say a word against the Sahaba. But the differences that happened between them, this was the biggest test of all. And it was the loss of the Prophet ﷺ. And you cannot imagine what that was like. Unless maybe you have a shaykh. Because a shaykh can take people who belong together. They love each other, but they can't work together because we're different. And he can put a bond between them. So they love each other like anything. I've seen it. I've seen it. It's a miracle. I remember one of my sheikhs, he told me, I put a bond between you and you, this man and that man. He told me that 4 years before it happened. And I keep these notebooks because my first sheikh told me, keep notebooks. It's a good thing to do. You should always have, this is the scholar's sword. And this is, very important. Always have paper, always have a pen. Not a pencil, a pen, so it won't erase. And he told me, he said, I put a bond between you and this man and that man. And I'm telling myself in my notebooks, like, don't see it. I mean, in politeness, because I know that it's there. He told me, I don't doubt my sheikh. And then all of a sudden, one year, there it was. You know, I mean, we became like the closest people on the face of the earth. And I liked all of them. And I loved them. But we're very different. And he always said, you need to work with this man. And it's like, he's great, I love him, but we're very different. And then it's like, there you are. It's like, now you're with him. This is what sheikhs can do. So you take people like the clans of Quraysh. They are good people. They're the best people. You know, they're the same family. They're beautiful people, but they're very different. They're very different. They have different characters. And the Prophet can bring them all together. And he can bring them together with all the people on the face of the earth. Ethiopians, you know, Romans, Suhaib al-Rumi. He can bring them together with the Ansar. Everything. This is what he can do. But when he dies, we didn't recognize ourselves anymore. Because then, for a moment, it's like you wake up out of the beautiful dream into a nightmare. Where is my Prophet? Where is my Prophet? He's not there anymore. He was everything. You can't imagine what that's like. Wallahi, you cannot imagine. And all of the troubles that happened during the caliphate of Uthman, may Allah be pleased with him. Allah be pleased with great. Uthman was great, beyond words. But all the differences that happened, you know, Uthman has got to rule a state. And the Arabs never had a state. And he has to do his ijtihad. And he's got to be able to depend on his relatives because he can't depend on the others. They don't understand what a state is. This is his ijtihad. He had to do that, wallahi. And he did it in all sincerity. And there were also people who changed the writing of the letter. This is also the issue about, you know, the sheikh who relies on the letter, because he wrote something very different than what was interpreted and dotted that came to Egypt. These are all things to be studied. But when the differences occur, this is smallpox. This is yellow fever. This is every disease imaginable to religious communities as inoculation, so that this ummah never gets sick from that again, ever. And so all these things that happened, you know, they inoculate us so that no matter how much we differ, no matter how much we clash, that we will never change our Aqeeda. And we will never change the foundations of faith. That's a miracle. And that's one of the wisdoms. You have to, Allah has wisdom in that. You know, we accept that and we love the Sahaba. But Imam Ali, when this fitna has happened, and there are people who insist on the creation of actions because they want to damn their enemies and declare them disbelievers, and you have people on the other side as well. Then he says, Al-amru bayn al-bayn. That the reality of this issue is between two extremes. Al-amru bayn al-bayn. La jabra wa la tafweed. There is no coercion. I'm not forced to do what is wrong. Wa la tafweed, and God doesn't consign my acts to me to do whatever I want without His knowledge, without His will, without His power. Wala ikrah, and there is no compulsion. Wala tasleet, or overlordship, empowerment. God doesn't empower me to be a little God, you know, to do whatever I want to do and will to do. No. And then Imam al-Hasan says years later, وَالْبَوْنَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ الْبَيْنَيْنِ كَمِثْلِ مَا بَيْنَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And the distance that is between the two poles is like the distance between the heavens and the earth. You've got it right there. Who needs more commentary? You know, beautiful. These are really amazing human beings. And we've got to be able to tell our story. We've got to be able to get this deen out. You know, this deen, we've got to have it in the best. Look at this. Look at this beautiful book. This is the way we have to do things. You know, the best books, the best films, the best documentaries. At the best websites, everything. You've got to tell the people. You know, you're the watchman in the middle of the night. You've got to wake them up. You've got to tell them, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, let them live. You are offering people the gift of life in Australia, New Zealand, South America. South America is incredible. Incredible. The Caribbean, Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, the United States, Canada, England, you know, and we've got to have institutions. We've got to have institutions like the ones that we're building, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay, and then these are the questions right here. We're out of time. This is one of my problems. You know, I have to exist better in space and time, right? You know, we fly away to our Lord and forget about time and space, inshallah. May Allah make every day of yours and every night Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Qadr, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And may He give us the blessing of Nisfu Sha'ban, which is tonight, right? Is it? Tomorrow? Okay. Inshallah. And may He make this the most beautiful time of your life. May He make every day better than the day before. And all your problems solved, but be patient. Be patient, be strong, be wise.